get our main gear on. Okay. Mess.
Yuri, I'm bringing you in.
Welcome to Speak Sex. I am your host, Eurydice. I am Greek from the island of Lesbos. I want to thank you for listening and thank you for trusting me as your sex whisperer here on Jolt Radio. I do believe that by starting to speak sex, we're also smashing the patriarchy, and we're doing that because it'll be good for both men and women. So the goal of the podcast is to change the world through sex, the articulation of sex, the speaking of desire, the finding of the words, and bringing light and consciousness into all things that are related to sex and relationship. And by doing that, we're gonna retrain our neural pathways and retrain our social habits and get ourselves into a space that's no longer a dichotomy between body and mind, between sexual practice and personal identity, and get away from the objectification of the female body and being as part of our sexual expression for both men and women. So I'm the writer of 3 books on female sexuality, Satiric on USA with Scribner, F32 with Virago Press. I've been a writer of the Sex Files column and staff writer for Spin magazine on issues of sexuality. I've been on TV shows, talk shows on this topic. I'm a multimedia artist with the theme of female sexuality. I give advice on sex on askeve.com. And today's guest is a lovely young woman who was born here in Miami. Her name is Cathleen Chambless. Welcome to the show, Cathleen.
Thank you.
She has an MFA in poetry from FIU. She's also a fellow visual artist and an activist. Her work has appeared in many publications. I love Woozy Mag, Storm Cycle, Grief Diaries, and her debut collection of poetry called Neck Romantic. Love the name.
Thank you.
It's exactly what I talk about all the time. Was a finalist for the Bisexual Book Awards in 2016. So, Cathleen, I would love to hear about your journey and how you found this identity, the name of the identity. You know, it's not quite the heterodominant thing we are handed by our parents. So you had to go on a journey and find yourself and eliminate all the extra stuff, right? The fluff that probably was there when you were a kid. So, what led you to become the woman you are today?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
So I guess you want me to answer like in terms of like sexuality wise or?
Yeah, sexuality, but also the story. You know, the journey, the heroine's journey.
Okay. Well, I'm from Miami. I guess I've always been into the arts like as long as I can remember. I've always kind of been a little different, not really like fit in with the other girls. I'm sure I was clocked as queer when I was young.
Oh, you
Looking
were?
back now.
Mm.
Yeah, because I wanted to be a gynecologist, and one of my mom's friends made fun of that, and that was like the first time I realized, oh, there's something wrong with this.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
The gynecologist?
My dad was a gynecologist.
Why would they think that has anything to do with sex?
I didn't even really think that I was 8, so right away.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. What else? I don't know. I guess like I really realized I guess my own sexuality probably in middle school.
Mm-hmm.
And then in high school started forming more of an identity, but was definitely like closeted. I started sleeping with women when I was 15. I didn't start sleeping with men until I was 18.
So you did
yeah.
sleep with girls
Mhm.
in high school,
Yes.
and it was classmates or older girls or girls from other groups, other social groups.
Oh, you know, the best friend.
Ah, the
You're
best
just
friend.
really close with her.
Oh, that's so cute. Yeah, I did that.
Aw. It's a good experience. You know, I did a lot of photography too, and I also wrote poetry. And I'm very much like sort of a confessional poet, and that comes out in my visual work as well. But eventually, I briefly went to school in Tallahassee. Really hated Tallahassee, but the one good thing that came out of it was like becoming a creative writing major. And so I kind of chased that dream, did my master's at FIU. But yeah, a lot of stuff happened between then. I think so.
So
Like
you slept with girls when you were 15, more than
Mhm.
one,
Yes.
and so at that stage, probably the kids in high school thought you were queer, right? Or it was secret.
Apparently.
Or it was secret.
It
You
was.
didn't tell anyone. You
I
didn't.
didn't tell anyone.
Okay.
I wasn't like. I don't-
Nobody was out. It was just like in secret. But then you'd go to school and not show anyone.
Right.
Right. Not holding hands.
I mean,
or-
people knew that, like,
Oh,
about
people
me
knew.
and my friends and
Oh,
stuff
okay.
like that. But I didn't realize, like, how much people actually talked about it till, like, I guess the last high school party that ever happened. Like, someone got really drunk and started talking about it, and it was really weird. But, you know.
Because it was considered outsider sexual
'Cause it was
choice, or yeah.
Because it was clearly, like, homophobic, and that's, like, why they were bringing it up
Yes.
and talking about it at a party and being like, oh my god, can you believe this? Blah, blah, blah. And, like, oh, now that they've graduated, we can actually say what we think about this
Wow.
kind of thing happened.
And their only resistance or dislike of it was that it wasn't normative. That's it. It was nothing else. Just simply that there was no penis in the picture.
Well, it was a boy that was talking stuff, so
Right.
I'm assuming he was threatened in some way. Emasculated, probably.
Wow. Yep. That's the word. Emasculated. The idea that, everything leads to emasculation is just not. There's like so much masculinity around, especially in Miami, which is a heavily masculine town. But then you did have a male lover at 18.
Yeah.
How did that happen? You were in college and you wanted to try something?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to get it out of the way.
Oh, so it was kind of like give my virginity away.
Well, I wouldn't have called myself a virgin. I had already been sleeping with women, but I was just like, why not?
Okay.
Yeah. So that's like pretty much that.
So you did. I'm sorry, but I love to be literal.
Cool. Go ahead.
So you did, quote unquote, and now I know this is a poor word choice, but you did lose your virginity to a girl, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Sweet.
Thanks.
And then what comes next?
Well, I ended up, I guess, down at FIU, where I became a women's studies major with an English major. But, I had some really great professors like Dr. Brandy Wilson at FSU who taught a lesbian lit class. And I think, like, once I had started reading books by, like, She Showed Us Valencia by Michelle T., like, once I saw that, I actually saw, like, representation of, like, girls like me, right? That, like queer punk kids, and it gave me, like, this sort of permission to write about stuff that I did not know that I could write about, or that there were voices like that, and that they were, acceptable, and not only that, just loved, you know?
It's great.
So I learned that, I guess in undergrad. And then grad school, I had moved into a queer punk house or anarchist collective. I lived there about like 5 years, and I don't know, that really like opened me up like sexually, and like helped me, I guess, in a lot of ways become just open with who I am. Realize that I'm more like polyamorous.
So how do you practice that in practical terms again? Because we're also, we are translating this to an audience that doesn't necessarily experience it. So that's
Right.
part of our calling here, is to share in a language that's clear. So how do you practice that polyamorous? How does it work for you?
I mean, I think it's like different with every
Yeah.
sort of situation.
Mm-hmm.
Have a primary partner and then maybe other partners, but I feel like everything, the main key is like communication
Mm-hmm.
and talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really done the thing where you try to like find someone if you already have a primary and you do the whole like looking for your unicorn thing. Like I don't mess with that too much. But yeah, I try to be like open and honest communication is pretty much it.
And okay, let's backtrack for a
For
second.
a long time too, I wasn't comfortable with having a primary, so I would just date people that already had primaries, so I didn't have to satisfy that for them. They already had that taken care of.
Right.
Yeah.
That's easier.
Yeah.
I find that easier.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, it can be dramatic sometimes.
Yeah. Well, especially, we writers are solitary beings, so people who are not don't understand how much we love, our time alone and how busy we are. Like, I'm so busy when I'm alone, but happily busy. I have all my creative projects, and there are more than I have time for. So yeah, having to kind of satisfy the needs of a primary relationship, which are way more than sexual, is very time consuming, and there's something to be said for being like secondary.
Yeah.
Source. But I was backtracking because I wanted you to describe a little life in that anarchist house. Was it a commune? Or
I wouldn't call it a commune. But like just different subcultures, we form our communities. So I guess that house is called the Boiling Point, and there's a lot of history of activism in that house. The people there did take back the land a while ago. Lots of really important protests with the food trade agreements. So there's a lot of like really rich activist history.
Yeah, what else?
There. What else? Well, it really is just like a queer safe space, and it's mainly like queer femmes that are there. Like, not that anyone who's masked would be like rejected, but it is more of like a safe space for queer femmes. And I really appreciated that about the house. They were very much like environmentally conscious. Yeah, they had like a gray water system. Grew a lot of like their own food, beautiful garden and stuff, and I don't know, it was just really nice. Like I learned to appreciate like women on another level, and like that bond between women and how important that is.
Right, and between women and the land.
Yeah,
and between women and nature and the cycles of nature, and the old religion and all of that.
That, and just in solidarity, like I met a lot of like badass activists there. Like lots of inspirational like femmes to look up to. It made really great friendships. I mean, I really got to see like what a strong femme was. Like, really, really cool people.
That's wonderful, and I think that's one of the most practical ways to reclaim our identity as women, is to kind of try to go back to right before patriarchy. I mean, we don't have really written record, but we can imagine, right? We can more or less feel our ancient mothers and what they were doing, and go back into that lifestyle. And I do think that male culture is so attached to the screen, right? I think that this whole like social media, big tech, uber capitalist greed. Again, I don't want to speak in binary terms at all, because it's not about physical gender, like who has what genitals at all. We're just talking about the energy, right? But the energy of patriarchy, which is not the energy of like the guys, the one guy or the other guy you meet, but overall, right? The overall system is there, and I feel that the energy of femme, of matriarchy, is in nature, which is what's being destroyed, of course. So it's not only real and life-threatening, but also extremely symbolic that, patriarchy survives and thrives on the destruction of Mother Nature. But I think that I had a guest actually in the program who said that religions, well, this is William Reich really who said it, that religions go in cycles, in long cycles, and it's like animism, polytheism, monotheism, atheism, and then back to animism. So there is a sense that we're going back to animism, which is the nature religion, and one way or another, whether because we choose to or because we're forced to by the environmental conditions, we're gonna go back, closer to nature in our ways, in our faith, in our understanding, because big media has pushed us so far away from it, that we have a craving for it, just to balance all the time we spend on the computer, on the phone, on the watch, in front of the TV, all of that. I feel that more and more people just need that balance. It's like visceral. And for me, like the podcast is one of these experiences where we offer something that's real and visceral and raw, and you cannot like get an app and filter stuff. Luckily, yeah. So what other? Okay, so let's go back. I mean, I'm trying to weave sex into this other
Sure.
conversation, but I find the other conversation very interesting. So I'm going to say something else as it comes to me. One of the reasons that I started the podcast is that I started writing a lot after Metoo. For that first year, I was just obsessed. I stopped what I was doing, in my creative work. Couldn't go back to it. It was honestly like a consciousness changing moment, because I had no control of what was going on. I had just so many thoughts, and what was coming to me was that no matter how feminist and femme I was identifying as and always had, I even went through a period where I was a post-feminist. The language that I worked with was male. It was created by patriarchy to enforce and support its overall system. And that's the only system we know. That's all we have. The laws, the care, all the customs, both the moral as well as practical ways that we have, are all supporting that patriarchy system. There is no alternative. There is really no space otherwise. So I realized that my sexuality, which I had thought was very, femme strong, was actually still within the male lens, and I was looking at my body and objectifying it myself and getting off of that in a kind of a porn way, because that's all I knew to get turned on. And in a sense, I was like pimping myself for my own pleasure, and by pimping, there was no money involved. Luckily, I'm very conscious of like provider sex and its ills. But that's why I suddenly realized that I was a participant in this whole thing, and perhaps there was no other way. I definitely myself hadn't experienced another way, because I felt like a turncoat, an informer or something. So I tried to put that in words that were not the words we were given, right, and found it so difficult. So one of the reasons I started these conversations on the air was exactly that, to just get testimonies, testimonials to this experience of where do women fit, and what's women's language, women's sexual language, women's sexual practice, how we can make space for ourselves.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Well, I guess like my experience with Me Too movement is kind of different. So, I mean, I've always been part of, like, punk and activist communities, so I had actually, called out a person who was really, I was in an abusive relationship with whatever, assaulted me, all that great stuff, who was then
Sorry.
in
I'm
a
so
really,
sorry.
no, I get it, like, in a really well-known punk band. So, I don't know, it just got to the point where I was sick of everyone worshiping a terrible rapist asshole.
Misogynist.
So,
pig.
misogynist, yeah.
Mhm.
So, whatever, I did a call out anonymously, and, like, in punk and activist communities, this was really common, and, like, how people get their forms of justice, and to ask for accountability instead of, like, working with the police, you know? So, I did that. It was a really intense experience. I definitely got outed. My, like, identity was revealed and all that stuff.
Did anything happen
and then a
to
bunch
the
of-
abuser?
Yes, both the record labels dropped him,
Wow.
lost his band, but then also other women started coming forward because he'd done this to a lot of women.
Good for you.
And then, thank you. And then, like, a little bit after, the, like, Metoo movement started happening, and so then it's just a lot of, like, it was just hard to, like, listen to. It was already, like, really triggering, and I had already been going through my own thing. I think this was, like, maybe 7 months after it started getting big. He had hurt someone too, and she went through the legal system, like a more recent partner, and the DA wouldn't get involved. Like, she brought evidence that she had been raped by this person, and the DA wouldn't press charges or anything like that. So, you know, he had straight up, like, you know, she, at the time she was carrying, like, his baby was his ex, and but they were, like, split up, you know. He went after her, like, with a knife, and, like, put it to her stomach, said, like, be with me or I'll cut the kid out. He was punching her. There were luckily 2 witnesses to call the cops, and, like, otherwise, who knows what would have happened, you know? And they were there and, like, helped keep her safe. But all he got was, like, probation.
Unbelievable.
And so she was hella pissed, rightfully so. And she took it to the Sentinel. And so then the Sentinel picked up the story. And then it went, like,
Good.
viral. Like,
Good.
and I think that was, like, honestly the most, like, justice that came of it, because eventually violated probation, like, threatening her, threatening me, etc. And just, anyway, was supposed to serve till the end of January, from, like, August to January, and then instead got out at the end of November. And that's it. That's
nothing. That's nothing, considering this physical assault and attempt to
Right.
kill.
So, like, when people say, like, go to the cops, why didn't they tell the cops? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Well, like, here's a really good example of, like, what happens when you do that.
No, it's very hard. You have to
You know.
do it consistently, on and on and on, like, doggedly. And still you have no guarantee. But basically, I think, you know, many women give up because it just poisons your daily life, and it's very hard to carry that burden day in, day out, for as long as it takes to pursue justice.
For sure.
You know?
For sure. And, like, the other survivor, like, I really, like, respect her, and, like, how she really, like, went through it, like, really tried really hard to, you know, her best. But I think her and
She didn't have I'm sorry, what is that called when they can't come, restraining order on him?
So at the time, she was pregnant, and the lawyer advised her not to do that, and just to give him, like, results and stuff or whatever, so she didn't seem like a crazy lady taking his baby away. But then after that, yeah, like, after he attacked her, got a restraining order, left to, like, another city, and
Yeah,
you
because
know.
the restraining order, at least it's something concrete that you tell the cops, okay, he violated the restraining order.
It is concrete, and I guess it just depends on if they want to
They
take
want
that
to do anything
seriously or
about
not.
it. Yes, yeah, no. I know. I was just reading last night, and I don't know if you saw it in the news, but I kept reading it and rereading it, trying to understand. But really, it's just that crazy will of the male animal that he will not be denied, no matter what. And I don't know where it comes from, that they can't take no. You know, it's just something snaps. If they've been told yes for so long, or at least they think it's yes, they take it for yes, they read every sign as a yes, right? And they don't stop and introspect at all, and they just go by this kind of, like, will or greed of the conqueror. I'm not quite sure what it is, But I was reading the story about this girl, I think in Virginia, and she's 14, and she was communicating online with a man who's in his late 20s or 26, something like that, in New Zealand. And he convinced her, they were on a social platform, he flattered her, he convinced her to send him nude photos, maybe video, and videos. I don't know, they didn't say exactly of what, but, sex, some sort of sexual, sexting, or sex video, something. Then she broke off with him. She told him she didn't want to communicate anymore. It was over. She hadn't received or asked for anything from him. And he got really mad. He felt really rejected, as if I guess he had owned her. He got on the plane, not even a man of means. He got on like 3 planes, a Greyhound bus, I forget what else, and got to her house in the exurbs, like outside the town in Virginia, and took a stone and knocked to break the basement door. And her mom opened the door. And she said, I have a gun, whoever you may be, I have a gun. If you come in, I'll shoot you. He didn't care. He kept breaking the thing. He tried to break into the house, knocked the front door down. The mom shot him twice, hit him. And they found that on the way he had bought like a rope and handcuffs and whatever, to a blindfold, I guess, to kidnap the girl and take her back to New Zealand.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But I mean, the woman told him numerous times, I have a gun and I'm going to use it. And, it didn't stop him. It just goes beyond, it just takes over whatever this control, this mania to possess the woman is, especially if they feel that she seems vulnerable, that she's being like their woman, his woman, if she has the baby, his baby, that whole thing, it's but I think that these days, because we finally have DNA testing, so every man can actually know if he wants to, like clear patrimony, you're the father, you're not the father, a lot of this like crazy possessiveness, can subside. If we women, work on it, work consciously on it, and we just can't give them the impression that they own our soul. I think that's, we can't. We have to hold something back for ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I that's interesting what you're saying, and I think it goes back to the right of like women as property and like possessions to own, and that male entitlement over female bodies. Like one of the last like marital like rape laws, I think, was like enacted finally in like the 80s in Louisiana, was like the last one. And the defense had tried to say like, well, his wife's his property, so she's not really
cannot be raped because they're married.
Yeah, exactly. And that was like the last time. That was like obviously not admissible, and so that was the last like case actually. So you have all that sort of stuff like going on.
Yeah.
And I think like a lot of men are really intimidated by women when they're okay like by themselves or without them. Like you just see it a lot. Like even like, okay, I drive for Lyft on and off sometimes, and like there's definitely a lot of men that get like, they don't understand that I'm not afraid to drive at night, and they're like, aren't you scared? And it's like, oh. The ones that are asking me that, I'm like, okay, all right, I know like how to look at you now. But they're just like, and some other guy was like in my car saying some BS like, oh, like I'm such a good guy because like I could rape you and I won't right now. And I was like,
what an asshole.
End ride. But it was just like, oh, okay, yeah, like good for you for not being a rapist. Like, you want a fucking cookie for that? Like, wow, you are so woke, bro.
Yeah, you're gonna
what
rape
a great
your
feminist
Lyft driver.
Yeah.
Suddenly, I mean, you get in a Lyft and suddenly that's a thought.
Mm-hmm. And like, and other like Lyft drivers, they've talked about it to other women, like saying like they just get pissed that you're not afraid to do that by yourself, and they want to take that.
They want to teach you a lesson.
Yeah, and it's also like, well, do you think I would be doing this if I had another option right now? Also, too, like it's like they seem to think like we should be out like partying and doing all these other things. I don't know what they think most of the time, but it is really unsettling how mad like they get if you're not afraid to do something.
Yeah.
You know.
I agree. I agree. It does destabilize. Again, the heteronormative, average male. We're not talking about, sensitive, brothers, but it does destabilize their sense of identity very much. That's what I think. I mean, I have had definitely relationships that ended basically because of that, and I feel that men that I've been with have always felt left out of my entirety of my consciousness, but they, eventually relationships ended because they just felt I didn't want them enough, need them enough, go their way enough. And
you're a successful woman too. That must really intimidate them.
And I'm so used to being by myself and getting things done that I need to do. Not used to, kind of depending on another, and also I'm not used to mixing sexual desire with that desire. Like even the sex, the romance, the sharing. A degree of domesticity is okay. It really has nothing to do though with work, with where I'm the rest of the time, my creative life. To me, they're totally separate. And when a man gets close enough, he wants access to all of you, which is ridiculous. But again, that's like that Disney myth or whatever, the Romance era myth of like the damsel in distress, which is really, not coincidentally, it began just as, the extreme control of patriarchy over the female body was loosening up with the rise of the bourgeoisie. So until then, we were 100% chattel. It's like, you're raised, your father chooses who you're married, and then you're sent to that guy's, household, and then you stay there, you have his children, and that's the end of you. And that was women's lives for, all of Christianity, basically. So, more than 1,000 years. And then when women began being educated, again, with beginning of middle class, and started writing books, even participating, not very much, but participating in social life, immediately we have this new idea, the romanticism, right? So the woman is still passive. Her job is to be saved, to be loved, to be honored, to be treated like a queen, whatever that means. Have the door open, you don't have to do anything, don't touch anything. That is not being on a pedestal. We women mistake that. If we fall, we fall for that whole setup, and we're like, oh my God, I'm loved so much, I'm being put on a pedestal, and it's no, you're not allowed to do anything. All your power is taken away from you. You're like the ghost of yourself. You're a puppet. That's what you've become. So just looking good and being compliant in bed, and then maybe if it's a long-term relationship, bearing, offspring, that doesn't give you any identity, any say in the world, So yeah, I think that some men are still threatened by the blossoming femme identity and voice. But I believe that if they took a moment and not react on instinct and kind of process it, they would see how much it would help them. It helps them. First of all, it liberates them from the extreme burden of always being the one who proposes, who has to not be shy, not be self-conscious, always ready. And it relieves them from the burden of providing money for everybody, for the woman, buying the dinner, buying the movie ticket, buying the, whatever. It depends at the level, the purse, the shoes, the trips, the etc. I don't know, the cosmetic surgeries, and add to it more and more. And I feel that if we, if we women have a strong and self-driven financial life that's not dependent on men, then we also practice, discovering our desire regardless of financial considerations, right? Regardless of like the provider sex thing. So you don't have to think like, oh, this guy is like respected by his peers, he has money or he has fame or he has status, or so he's like more attractive than another guy who may or may not be actually for you more suitable and more charismatic, but then he doesn't meet that criteria, And many women choose their mates as if they were going to have babies with everyone, but they're not going to, but they're still stuck in that mode. But I think that if you feel confident that you can take care of yourself financially, and if you drive a lift, power to you. Like, what's wrong with that? You're just driving. It's beautiful, I think. And in that, that's like one of the numerous steps that I think will take us, back to a place where women are stronger and more respected.
I also think they just can't understand the fact that, like, we don't need them, or that I can find a lot and more in another woman, right? I think, like, the main assumptions that are made about me, because I'm, like, 30, whatever, oh, are you married, you have children, etc. It's, like, so out of, like, someone's mind that it could be like, oh, well, actually, no, or I don't know, or, like, oh, like, they wouldn't think, like, are you married to a woman, right? And that's probably, like, one of the most common, like, questions I get from these, like, dudes. They're like, oh, well, why isn't your man driving Lyft for you, or blah, blah, blah. And I'm not gonna, like, be like, I don't have one. Or even, like, if I came out and said, like, oh, actually, like, I like women, you don't know if that person's gonna get violent with you for that reason. You don't know if they're gonna try to, like, rape you to prove you straight, because that happens too.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
And it's just, like, imperceptible that, like, you could be happy as, like, an autonomous being, or, like, find love in places other than a cis man. Yeah. So there's that.
So how do you compare, since you've been with both, how do you compare the feeling of being with a woman? How is it different?
I think there's, like, a level of understanding between, women that is just, like, not there between a man and a woman. You have, like, a shared struggle and things that you're going to, like, understand more about each other, that you can talk about more, comfort each other, you're going through it together, and so I think, like, there's that profound emotional aspect. Sex is definitely a lot, it's more interesting, I would say. Like, sex with women is fun, I don't know. And I guess, like, dudes just, like, finish and that's, like, kind of it, and women get to keep going, and that's, like, a huge difference there. I don't know.
And they're just much more experimental in the absence of the live penis.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
Do you find that women talk about it more? About sex, what they're gonna do, what they wanna do, or it's not really different?
I think it depends. Like, some, I guess, women are, like, very, like, or a lot of the people I talk to are very, like, sex positive and, like, not, like, waiting for a no, but, like, a yes, right?
Yeah.
So, like, there's that, and usually, like, talking about or asking, like, oh, are you cool with this, or are you cool with that? Especially, like, if you're gonna do, like, BDSM stuff, that's, like, all about consent, and you have to talk about that, you know?
Yes.
So, like, with both, like, genders, of course. I think, like, maybe some, like, more recent, like, male partners that I've had and stuff have actually been, like, really respectful and ask, and, like, have been, like, super nice, but, like, I would say that's, like, few and far between, and I kind of, like, really I'm really selective if I choose to, like, engage with a man, because to me it's like, you don't know what they're gonna turn into, I don't know, or, like, what their motives really are. I just don't really, like, trust them as much. I have a general distrust, so there's that.
Well, yeah, I think the BDSM world, for sure, is much more reassuring that way, because within that, world, men have the same vocabulary, and they're used to, negotiate before and explain everything and have the safe words and kind of speak carefully, especially if they're going to dominate. You know, they want to come from a place of kind of passivity until the sex begins, you know, to make sure that everything is understood. To me, it's very inspiring, you know, for the rest of heteronormative society, the way sex happens in BDSM, because it's so defined. Yeah, I wish we could do more of that, you know, like actually discuss what we've done, what we like to do, and what we've never done and would like to try, or, you know, whatever, openly. And, you know, even say, like, for how long, or who ends up where, or, you know, all that stuff, which I feel is done more, you know, in subculture.
For sure. I think in terms of BDSM, I would rather, like, sub for a woman. I don't know. I love worshiping women, I guess, you know, so that fits for me. But when I've been with male partners, like, for the most part, like, they are my sub.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and I like that. I like the power, like, you feel in that, or I feel in that personally. So those were really, like, liberating and cool experiences.
Yeah, so that's a major switch, and
Yes.
it's, like, gender specific.
Yes.
Interesting.
There's probably, like, only a couple, like, one or two men I would, like, feel comfortable subbing for. Otherwise, I would much rather dom them. I think it's more fun.
Mm-hmm. And what do you, I mean, how do you experience that? I'm curious, because it is work. And I think that, you know, a lot of women who don't do it, I mean, I think it's very satisfactory. I agree with you, you know, spiritually and psychologically, and it's just like, whoa, it's fulfilling on so many other levels, because it makes up for, like, real life.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Right?
Yeah. It's awesome.
Right. But it is work. You know, like, if you compare that to, like, you know, the girl who, like, lies in bed, or, you know, turns her ass up and then lies in bed again. It's, you know, I find that it takes, you know, you have to kind of sweat, you know, it's not, it's very different, but you kind of become the man, right? You feel that you embody the male principle, because you're the doer, you're the agent, and the man is the recipient.
I guess I could see that, but it's more like, oh, this is, like, the power, like, maybe a man feels.
Right.
But yeah, I
But
mean,
it's called power exchange place.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's exchange for sure.
yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. Yeah, I agree. Like, it is work, but it depends what kind of, like, relationship you have, what kind of partner you have. There's that, and then, I don't know, it's weird. It's like whenever I would be, like, visible to men on, like, dating websites, which I'm not, like, anymore, they, like, look at me, see tattoos, and they'll be like, hey, would you like to, like, suck on my foot and, I don't know, like, peg me and all this, like, stuff. And it's like, wait, so what part of you, like, thinks, like, I'm the one, A, to, like, enact whatever, like, fantasy you have that you're too afraid to, like, ask someone else for, like, and two, like, why wouldn't you, like, offer money for that? Like, what makes you think that I'm gonna do that for you, first of all? And, like, you're pretty much giving me a list of things that should definitely be paid for, stranger on the internet.
Yeah, if it's a stranger,
if that's how you're gonna talk to me
internet,
too,
right.
you know. But
is that like FetLife? Is that what?
no, that happens on OkCupid all the time. I think, like, FetLife, it's
Really?
more. Yeah. I notice a lot on OkCupid, just saying really weird
Weird, yeah.
shit. Like
suddenly, out of nowhere, they
I like
make
to
that
be
assumption.
sissified, and I like it when people step on my dick and stuff. And I'm like, all right, I don't know why you're telling me this, but cool, good for you. You know, I'll be like, okay, so, like, well, if that's what you like, that'll be $200, just to see what they'd say, and it's usually like unmatch right away. But
yeah.
So
Yeah, and so how do you compare that to FetLife?
I don't use FetLife, so
Okay.
I wouldn't know. I have friends that did it, and it seems like FetLife is, like, at least from what I've heard, it's more about there's a kink community.
Right, exactly.
And you guys get to know each other and
yes,
stuff.
exactly.
And, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Sounds nice.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I've met, like my friend is really active in the kink community, so she's, like, introduced me to people that she met from FetLife and stuff, and they're all super cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and that,
Yeah.
that was nice. It's a completely different thing. Like people who are just in the community and they're not, I guess, like so on the down low or something that they feel like they have to go on like random dating
Right.
website and ask someone for
Mhm.
these things, and it's like, yeah.
So you've had some success with the dating apps?
Meh.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't do it. I can't.
It's been useful for like meeting women actually,
Mhm.
but yeah. So
Interesting.
yeah.
So that's like more human, not so dehumanized. You find that that's just, I can see how that might be more human. Because there is just less fucking translation needed, you know, when they are, you know, who they may be and what they're looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
It's always like kind of hard to know if the person's like, okay, is like this person just very much like socialized as typical female where they're cool with like being like touchy-feely and all those like stereotypical things, or it's like, oh, or is she like laughing and grabbing my hand because she likes me? And I guess like if you the dating website, like those sorts of things are taken out because it's never like really a good experience when you try to
Right.
when you read that wrong.
So you read
some
that wrong,
people
yeah.
are really not okay about that. Yeah.
They're threatened.
Yeah. So
yeah, so I guess, I mean, I'm surprised that they are, you know, you'd think that they would be flattered, but yeah, you make sure that at least they are also looking for some queer experience.
yeah.
Yeah. And you were saying, what are the, you told me about the hybridization, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right.
Hybridization?
Yes.
Okay.
Events that you were organizing or participating in. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Oh, okay, yeah. So I ran like a queer reading series where we read like poetry, sometimes nonfiction stories or fiction. I used to run it at the Stonewall Museum. I'd like to maybe get funding at some point and run that again. But I used to, have more like readings with other like queer poets and writers. I think it's really important to make that space, because there's so much like our voices aren't really heard or taken into account. I don't know, and it's really nice to just like support each other. And like have a moment to like always like charge at the door, so I try to like make sure people get paid and stuff, and like it's I don't know, it's a good experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So I want to close our talk with you reading a short poem of yours. I think that would be nice for a closure.
Sure.
So do you have something that you can give us really quickly from your book?
Totally. So yeah, my book's called Necromantic.
Mm-hmm.
You can either get it, and Romantics in parentheses, you can get it on Amazon, you can get it on small press distribution. Yeah. I know which poem it is, I'm just finding the page. Okay, so this is called On Dying Alone. Dying alone, alone with a cat with a witch, an old witch, alone with a cat. I will be that lady, the old lady without kids except the kids in the neighborhood. Kids in the neighborhood afraid of me. Me, I will be a dare, a double doggy dare on Halloween. On Halloween, I double doggy dare you to ring my doorbell. Ring, not on these fingers. These fingers made this house blacked out except for a candle in the attic window. The attic window, a red light to throw everyone off. Adults think I turn tricks with those treats. What a treat. To be that old puta bruja sucia. A puta bruja sucia with a shotgun in a rocking chair on her stoop. On my stoop with my cat, I purr. A purr to welcome the end of everything.
So might it be? That was lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for listening. This was another episode of Speak Sex. I'm your host, Eurydice, and we'll be back next Friday. And until then, speak sex to each other. Ciao. That was great.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I gotta process it and then we'll do our photos. I need a minute to get
Sure.
everything.